marketing is always going to touch everything. I do a lot of marketing. Obviously, it's a 3-person company, but to your point about it being your baby, like marketing is always going to touch everything. Like everything inside of a company can be marketing, like the product, the brand, the website, the language, the story. The CEO is going to be involved in all those things. And so maybe they're not the marketing executor of those things, but they're going to own the vision. Exit. Hey, Brandon, good to see you. Glad to have you back on the podcast. You just landed a new job.
Yes.
And we're going to talk specifically about that today. But for people who don't know who you are, give us your first name, last name, little backstory, little career history on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, Brandon Redlinger, and a little bit about my background. I did start my career in sales. I was an SDR way before they called it an SDR, and carried a bag as a rep for a little bit, but then really made the transition over to the marketing side because I realized that marketing can be that force multiplier. That's more my skill set, my background, like what I was interested in. So made the move over to marketing, was early Engagio days, got acquired by Demandbase, ran demand gen and ABM for Demandbase for a bit, and then went over to the product marketing side. So ran product marketing and content at a company called Revenue.io. And then after that, left to take my first VP role at VP of marketing at a company called Crosscheck, and then I just ended that. Well, wrapping that up, as I'm sure we'll chat about, and then VP of marketing at Chili Piper.
So I want to talk about how you landed the job at Chili Piper, but I think first, just a lot of people that listen to this podcast like the kind of behind the scenes career stuff that doesn't come up often because usually we don't have a friend or somebody to navigate that with. And so I think sharing that, you being open to sharing this is going to be super helpful. Let's talk about your transition here. You were VP of you still are as you're winding down. What led to you wanting to make the decision to say, hey, it's time for me to go find a new company? I'm curious to unpack that because it's going to be relatable to a lot of people listening.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so a few things went into it. One, there is just the growth of the company wasn't the growth story, which I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing this. What it is now versus when they joined 16, 18 months ago, right? Because that's when really things started to hit the SaaS and tech space really hard. So we weren't quite growing as fast. And I mean, I know this is something that you're big on and that you heard from DC, but just making sure that the company is growing as fast as you, or you are growing as fast as the company. So I did feel like I was growing a little bit faster than the company. The company had stepped back a little bit in terms of their growth, and just a lot of hesitation from marketing, as in like they were marketing from their heels. They didn't want to try new and exciting things anymore. It was very much, hey, we need to stay afloat. We need to cut budget. We need to cut headcount. And every quarter, my headcount or budget was being cut instead of being given more. So it was just a story of not growing as fast as I, matching my career and what I wanted to be doing.
Well, it's hard, especially you've been at high growth companies and you've been, at least from my observation, an early adopter, experimenter. Let's try new stuff.
Exactly.
Let's move fast. Let's take chances. And then it's very hard when you're at a company when all that stuff gets cut. I think sometimes, and I've had this happen to me once where it was really hard because you don't know the time frame of it, and it's like, okay, if it gets cut once and it's like we're going to revisit it after this quarter or half year, you can kind of okay, I can kind of see how this will be interesting for me. I'll have to do something different for 6 months. But when it keeps getting pushed out and there's no investment and there's no progress, it's really hard and challenging mentally, when it could be that they cut the budget. It could be that you're working with a product team that is just not shipping anything or once a year. It could be another internal org, like the way you work with the sales team. There's so many of these mini factors that lead into yeah, I'm trying to make this work, but I'm just being pulled back in all those directions. And I think when that happens, it's time to figure out, man, I got to make a change.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And part of it too is, I mean, a lot of marketing leaders face this, but um, if Kip said it well on your recent podcast with him, but the first job of a CMO is to realize the CEO is the real CMO. Like that one hit me hard, and it's like, yeah, that's very true. I think the CEO and I had a different view of what marketing actually was, and the more pressure that we got from a company, and from the board to hit some of these numbers, the more divergent our paths became.
So what was your how do you explain that Kip story to somebody else? Like now that you know what that means.
Yeah, it's like CEOs, it's their baby, right? And they've gotten to where they are because a lot of times they've had such big aspirations, borderline delusional sometimes. And a lot of times they're talking with their buddies who also own a company mind you, in a completely different space or completely different situation, but their team did this and they saw a lot of growth. And hey, Brandon, why don't we go do this now too?
Let me tell you
And
something. The worst time for me would be when DC found out about like another company and like the
yes,
size of
yes.
their marketing org, and he's like, "They're doing this with only 3 people. How we got 30 people? How can we not do this?" It's like, oh my god,
Yeah,
those are the ones.
exactly, exactly. And
But
yeah,
I
you
feel
have
that now. I feel that now. Even I'm running my own business now, and I feel that. I'm like, it's I do a lot of marketing. Obviously, it's a three
yeah,
person company, but
exactly. Yep.
to your point about it being your baby, like marketing is always going to touch everything. And so for the like everything inside of a company can be marketing, like the product,
Yep.
the brand, the website, the language, the story. The CEO is going to be involved in all those things. And so maybe they're not the marketing executor of those things, but they're going to own the vision. And I think that's the realization is like, oh, I can help shape this, but I'm going to have to pretty much carry this order out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you really have to know when to pick your battles, and those battles that you do pick, how are you going to win those battles? Do you need data? Is it more of a storytelling thing? Do you need examples? So it is going to be different from CEO to CEO, but I think you will always naturally run into that. And I think like, it's healthy a lot of times, but at some point, some CEOs just have too divergent, or they're too delusional.
Yeah. Well, I think the delusion is great. I mean, I've worked with founders that their delusion is like suspends. They used to say about like Steve Jobs or his reality
Yeah, yeah,
distortion field.
exactly.
I think they all have that, and it's like, yeah, you don't think we can't get 1,000 people at our event in the first year, and we did it, right? It was crazy. Like so, some of that stuff it pulls you in the right direction, but when you don't believe that when you don't see eye to eye on how the CEO gets marketing and sees the company, and then you're getting budget cuts, it just becomes hard to stay motivated. At what point, like, when did you go from like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of see where this goes to riding it out? I think a lot of people I see in the community and just feedback in general, people kind of they have these feelings, but they don't know when to jump off. A lot of people are like, well, it's really meaning, I need to get to a year. Or I
Yeah.
used to say this all the time. I'd be in the wrong job. I'd be like, we like to say this one, Brandon. I've only been here for a year, so I can't leave yet. And I totally disagree with that. When did you find what was that point in your journey?
I even thought about that sometimes too, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm a marketer. Whatever happens, I need to be able to tell the story. I can spin the story however I want. I do think a lot of people put too much weight on that, in that, yeah, they'll see that I was only here for less than a year. That'll probably look pretty bad on my resume. Whereas honestly, I think some of the best marketers that I worked with, they have a lot of short stints. And it's because, like, it makes them even better because they've seen so many different things. They have a lens for all these different, like, their thought process is different. They've seen so many different things, whereas people that have stayed at a company for 8 years, it's almost like they only know one thing. They don't have that diversity of thought, that diversity of experiences that can be a big advantage. The other thing too that I really was thinking about that helped me make the decision was just my read on the market. And it was a bet that I placed that I don't think this market is going to really recover in the next 18 months, 12 to 18 months. So I didn't want to stick around for that much longer. And I do
And
think,
when you say market, are you talking about like in general or in this company where this company was playing?
yeah, the space that this company was playing. Yep. And I do think a big success of marketing leaders is their ability to understand and read and react to the market. It's probably more important today than ever before, which is a big reason I chose to get back into the Martech, RevTech space.
All right, and then you were saying that so we're gonna talk about you taking a new job at Chili Piper, how that came about. Um, because I saw Alina had I feel like I remember seeing Alina had posted something crazy about how many people applied,
Yeah.
and I didn't see the conclusion of it, and then I got a message from you, and I was like, "Oh, interesting." So, I wanna get there, but first, you said earlier that you kinda made this weird a mistake maybe that you wouldn't have done before, or, just giving you're kinda in this in between phase where you had the option to just give your 2 weeks and be out, and they convince you to stay longer, and you shouldn't have done that, and I think that was very brave of you to air that out, and I think it's, very relevant for people because it's very easy for it's human nature, right?
Yes,
You
exactly.
quit your job,
I
I
want to do
feel
right by
bad.
them. Yeah,
I feel yeah,
exactly.
I wanna do right by them, like, I wanna go over the to like, okay, but at some point, you gotta figure out what that line is, and I think maybe you're learning you're in the middle of that, so tell us.
Yeah, it's funny because after I did that, I talked to a few other people who did that as well at previous companies, and they all had the same thing. Yeah, I would never do that again. So yeah, I ended up staying through the end of January, just helping them make the transition, doing 2 days a week, and so that was six weeks instead of just your standard 2 weeks, and I already made my decision. And then a lot of what I got, which is again a shared experience, was then people at the company, the leaderships and leadership team and the executives going, like completely doing a 180 on their view towards you and how they end up treating you. And so it was more like I hate it when people say this, but like, yeah, we want people who want to be here. And like that just drives me crazy when people say that. And yeah, I think it's BS. It's like, yeah, I wish this company was the company that I thought I joined in the first place. Of course, I'm not going to go say that, but just the attitude and perception of me changed. Obviously, they didn't mean to, but it was just like the more they thought about it, the more they could say, "Oh, I'm going to poke holes in what Brandon was doing here," and just a lot of things came out of that. Oh, your
Sorry,
audio's
and now
out.
you
Yeah,
have to sit there
uh,
and witness it. Now you have
yeah,
to sit there and witness it and not get defensive about it and try to find a way to just move on.
yeah, exactly. And I think like for me, whenever someone's moving on, whether it's we're letting them go or whether um, they decide to leave, like it defines their experience, right? In psychology, it's the peak end rule. It's like your experience is defined by the peak and then the end experience. And when people like, even though most of my time there was pretty good, out the door I wasn't treated super well. Most of my recollection of that experience is going to be a positive one. And now I probably won't go and say, hey, someone else, there's an open opportunity to lead marketing at CrossCheck. Why don't you go there? You know, or even refer people to the business.
I'm just taking notes, and I wha this is like when to break up with your company.
Yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
know when to break up. So how did you do it? How did you break up? This is always something I am interested to find out from others, and this is another one of those questions that I wish somebody would have shared. So what did you do? You send an email to your boss, you hop on a Zoom call, are you in the office? How did you do it?
Yeah, it started off with a one-on-one. And I was like, hey, is this working? And it was more just an open conversation. And I think we both knew where we were, where it was going. I probably would have just been a little bit more straight up in the beginning. And then I was like, yeah, let's just think about it. Let's regroup in a few days and see how we're really feeling. And then it was more, okay, yeah, this isn't working out.
And
I'm
did
gonna
you
give my
know
two
but was
weeks.
that kinda your conclusion already and you just kinda, like, slow played it a little bit? Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that again. Exactly. It's just like, just rip the band-aid off. It's always easier just to straight rip the band-aid off.
Yeah, it's hard. This part sucks, and it's always people are people and it's hard and there's, it's not business, it's not personal, it's business, but it is because you're dealing with people and you're interacting with people. And so
Like, you've been in the trenches with them for the last 18 months,
yeah.
and you're meeting with them every day, and
And you think about what you're telling them. You're telling them typically, and then especially if you're working for the CEO or the founder, you're saying like, "Hey, that thing that you bet your whole life on and your whole existence that you created, that you're running, I don't want to be part of that thing anymore."
exactly, exactly.
It's like going back to being a kid on the playground and someone's like, "I don't want to play with you anymore." Okay.
Yeah,
It's
and it's never
impossible
as
to
bad
not.
as
Yeah, no, it's never as bad as you think. Let's go. I want to hear your take on that, but I was just going to say like it's it's very hard to be robotic about it on both sides.
yeah, yeah, exactly, but yeah, it's never as bad as you think, and you always play it, replay it in your head, and you have so much anxiety leading up to the conversation, whereas if you just made it easy and just ripped the Band-Aid off, I think it would be easier on everyone's end.
And if they had to lay your ass off, they would do it in a second.
Exactly,
And
100%, because it's a business decision, right?
I've always kind of felt that way, and it's tough to say that, but I think you need to you can be loyal to a company while you're working there, but I would always be seeing what else is out there just so you can know your worth in the market.
Exactly,
And I think the more
100%.
data you have, even if you're not looking, to know what you could be making, what terms you could be getting, what your life could be like, I think you have to look out for yourself and be and do that, right? And so this is also part of the process, is being able to turn down, is to walk away from things if it's not the right fit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and the other thing I always think about too is I only have so many at bats, right? And I wanna hit another home run, and yeah, I forget who it was, but they're like, "Yeah, you basically have 8 at bats, and if you pick the right company, it can be life-changing generational money for you and your kids," and that always still is in the back of my mind.
Yeah. I'd like a lottery ticket like that for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
All right, let's talk about, so you made the decision to leave, you wind down, blah blah blah. You shouldn't have stayed on longer, but you are, and you learn that lesson from next time.
Yeah.
Another lesson is to just be more direct. Why delay it? If you've come to that conclusion, say it and be direct and get on with it. Right? Was that
Yep.
can we sum it up like
Yes.
that?
Definitely. That's a
All right.
perfect summary.
Let's talk about, how did you get the role at Chili Piper? And you decided to leave, you go and see what's out there. I'm assuming you were looking for other jobs and applied for other things too. Tell me the whole story. I have pretend I don't have any context. Pretend listeners don't have any context as to what was going on at Chili Piper.
Yeah. So, yeah, Alina, co-founder, co-CEO over there, decided to take over marketing for. I think her plan was, let me take over marketing for a year, and then we'll hire actual head of marketing again. And then I had met Alina at the CMO Pavilion event back sometime last year, and had great conversations and just had been in touch. And then when she posted that she was hiring for a head of marketing, I said, "Oh, Chili Piper, I bought that before. We use Chili Piper. We're getting great results, and they do the type of marketing that I want to go do again. They're in a space that I know really well." I reached out to Alina because, she made a post about this. They got over 1,000 applicants in less than a week for this role. So I did not go to the website and apply. I went straight to Alina. And I think, yeah, if you're applying to websites, it's probably, yeah, you're just going to get lost in the
Wait,
shuffle.
so did you email her? Did you DM her on LinkedIn? What did you do?
I DM'd her on LinkedIn,
And what did she say?
and she said, "Oh yeah, Brandon, let's have an initial conversation."
Wait, and did you comment on the post or you just went and DM'd her about her post?
I straight DM'd her.
Yeah.
Yep.
You had a conversation with her and got the job?
Yeah, no, no. It was just yeah, initial conversation. Hey, great, let's keep chatting. Had another conversation with her, and then went through the whole interview panel. I did the exercise.
What was the
Uh,
interview panel?
it was 3 people from the team, from the marketing team, and then the head of sales,
Okay.
and then
And
the,
what was the time frame of that? Did it happen quickly?
no, it was all over probably like 3 months or so.
Okay.
So it was a longer process, I think, again, because, well, actually, yeah, we had that initial conversation, and then I sent a follow up that night, And then I didn't hear back from her for a week. So I sent another follow up email. Didn't hear back from her for another week. I sent her another email. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to hit her up on LinkedIn again. She's like, oh, I never got your emails. I was like, is this the right email? And she's like, yeah, that's the right email. And then she sends a screenshot of her searching for my name in her inbox and it not showing up. So had I not followed up, I probably wouldn't have gotten the job. And she's like, I thought you were not interested in us anymore.
Oh my god.
So it's like the just having,
Oh,
yeah,
because
the power of follow up.
you had already had a conversation initially.
Yeah, initial conversation went well. We said, yeah, let's keep talking. Sent that follow up and just didn't hear back. And of course, I was sweating. I was like, why did she not like me? I was making up stories in my head. But important to follow up.
That's amazing. I mean, geez, yeah, that happens all the time. Good thing you did, and you went to LinkedIn.
Yep,
Who
just went
says
back to
LinkedIn
LinkedIn.
isn't valuable? Come
Yeah,
on, that's
seriously.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what? You had to do so you do this interview panel. Did they have like a type of a framework for an interview? Was it did it just kind of feel like three people on the team asking you questions, or was it like what kind of you know what I'm trying to say? Like some companies have like this very rigorous, like here's how we're going to interview process, and some are just like, yeah, meet with these three people and then let's talk.
Yeah, I think it was somewhere in the middle. It wasn't super structured. It sounded like she was getting advice from other marketing leaders of how she should run an interview process for a head of marketing specifically. And they do have a recruiter there. Yeah, it was a little interesting because I was kind of working with the recruiter, but kind of Alina, because Alina was my first point of contact there. And it was, yeah, and then at
Yeah,
some
who
point,
gets credit? Does the
yeah,
is the
exactly.
recruiter, you know, that's like a credit back to sales and marketing. Who's going to get credit on that?
Who's getting credit for
Multi-touch.
sourcing the
Yeah.
candidate? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then I did the exercise.
What was the
Um,
exercise?
it was around understanding the personas that they're selling to, and then also putting together. I think they called it like an activation playbook or something like that. But basically, putting together how you would approach a scenario. And because she's funny enough that I didn't get the email from the recruiter either. So the recruiter sent the email to me with the exercise. I never got it,
It's
and
like somebody didn't want you to have this job, my friend.
seriously, and I followed up on LinkedIn again, and the recruiter just sent me the sent me the exercise on LinkedIn, and then I was like, I feel bad because I'm making them wait another. Like I already made them wait a week because I didn't get the email, so I took a sick day off of work and just like pounded through the exercise in one day.
And what did you don't have to share exact plans, but like how did you approach this? I think a lot of people that have to do activities like this, it can be tough to know like
Yeah,
you obviously don't know that much about the company, and so to deliver a perfect plan where it's like this delicate balance of like actionable things but really just trying to show them like how you think. So I'm curious to
yeah.
hear how you approached it.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time just reading the assignment and really trying to understand what are they really getting at here? Like what's the intention of this assignment? What are they really looking at? I probably read it a dozen, at least more than a dozen times before I actually put pen to paper and started doing the exercise itself. And then I would do the exercise and I'd go back to the assignment and say, am I hitting the points that I think she's trying to look for in the assignment? And I think that is key, is just understanding what the assignment is and more importantly, what they're trying to get out of the assignment.
So I would go to ChatGPT and I would say, pretend you're interviewing for a VP of marketing job at a SaaS million at a 50 million, $100 million SaaS company, and blah blah blah. They've had three VPs of marketing before. A married couple runs the company. There's a lot going on. It's a very crowded industry. How would you approach this interview? Boom, boom, boom. I would get my 6 points. I would put them in a presentation, and I would say, there's my pitch.
Yeah, and the other thing too, when I was doing my exercise, I want to stand out, and I did take a risk on one of my personas, probably not a traditional persona, but I just wanted to show them that like I think about the problem a little bit differently, and I probably went a little bit above and beyond, but I do think I've always said like the people most prepared for the interview are the people who are going to get the job, not necessarily always the person that is the best fit. It's the person who's most prepared, and I spent a lot of time on that exercise. And then also too, wanted to make sure that anything that I did put in that exercise, I would be able to have a good conversation around and be able to back up my assumptions. And That was actually probably one thing in the interview process too. I made an assumption. I was wrong about the assumption, but I called it out, and I said, "Hey, I realized that I'm taking a little bit more ABM approach. Here's why I thought you guys actually had a little bit more ABM structures in place. I realized that maybe you don't because your head of sales was asking these questions. You are asking me these questions about the exercise itself. And I think just being able to recognize that and call that out and say, here's why I made that assumption probably
Yeah.
helped me.
Yeah, I mean, when you're that's great because like when you're interviewing at that level, the company wants to feel like they're getting smarter about marketing right now. And I think when you're hiring a VP of marketing in that interview process, it's not just like, oh, this guy's telling us what we want to hear. Oh, wow, interesting. I'm leaving that interview and like I just learned two new things from this person that I didn't know before. Okay, maybe we should try that. I think that's what you want to that's
Yes,
what you want to
yes.
get because you want to feel good. I've done that in hiring where like there's just been people that I've hired in the interview process. I'm like taking notes the whole time. I'm like, hold on, tell me how'd you do that thing? And
Yep.
versus sometimes I feel myself even just kind of going through the process and we're never really getting past that. And I think when you meet someone like that who wants to question how you're doing things and has like actionable ideas and is going to make you smarter, those are the people that you want to find yourself a way to work with, you know?
And that's kind of my goal in my conversation with anyone is can I either teach them something new or get them to think about something in a different way? And those are usually the best conversations anyway, but those types of conversations will make you stand out more.
And then what happened from there? Did you have to make this presentation or was it like a video?
Yeah, made the presentation,
Like on a
and
Zoom call?
no, so yeah, put the presentation together and then sent it over to them. They reviewed it, and then in my interview with Alina again, we just talked through some of the points. So we didn't say, hey, walk me through your entire presentation. It was, hey, on page 5 you said this. Let's like, why'd you say it that way, or is that contradictory to what you said over here? And then I was able to say, no, no, it actually works out pretty well with exactly what I said over here because XYZ. So it was just more of a conversation about the presentation rather than me giving the presentation. Although I have had that before.
Got it. Okay. So you didn't have to present it. It was like it was a deck somebody could walk through.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Got it. And then what happened? You got the job and it's over.
No, no, okay, yeah. So, had a few other conversations. I mean, one thing that I did want to have a conversation with her about was the metrics and the economics of the business and the health of the business, and that's something that I always want to go deep on. Like that's one of my big things that I'm looking for when I'm joining a company. Is it a healthy company? Is it a healthy business? And I think probably a lot of individuals looking to make that next step. I mean, one, they should know these things too, but two, it also makes you sound like more of a competent, able partners, right? If I say, hey, what's your LTV, what's your CAC, what's your payback period, what's your gross and net retention rate? Like if we have a good conversation around that, they're probably they're more confident that I have what it takes to be that marketing leader. And it's not just like, hey, can you tell me these answers? It's, oh, let's have a conversation around it. And for you too, just to make sure it's the right company. I was having a conversation with the CFO of a company. This is like 2 years ago, and he showed me the latest board deck, and I was like, "Great! I love the transparency. Okay, here's your ACV, here's your sales cycle, here's what you're doing in ARR." And I was looking at their LTV to CAC, and it's 17 to 1, and I was like, "Wow, that's phenomenal! Like, why aren't you guys pouring as much fuel on the fire as humanly possible because your payback is under 6 months, and I know that puts you in the top decile for like companies." And then I saw at the bottom the date that the metrics were pulled. And I was like, oh, so this is almost 6 months old already. What happened since then? So I dug into that a little bit more. Oh, we hired 11 reps. Okay, interesting. What's been your growth rate since then? Oh, it's not the double that we told you it was. It's actually closer to 15% growth. So not the healthy growth that we thought. And then it's like, okay, so how are you calculating CAC? Is that on a gross margin adjusted basis? Oh, it's not. Interesting. So basically, I went from being wowed by their LTV to CAC to concluding that they're probably below average. And
Have
just
you
like,
found that people have been willing to share this stuff with you? I mean, I would hope if you're coming in at VP of marketing level, but I'm just wondering how transparent founders are being with that type of information.
I would say most are. I have had a situation before where they said, happy to, let's get you to sign an NDA first. So that was a bigger company. And then they put me in touch with the CFO and we went through all of that. And there have been other companies before that were like, I'll show you the deck. I really don't know the answers to how we're really calculating this. That's someone from FP&A, and it's like they kind of shrug it off a little bit, but at least like know some of your metrics and have a good conversation around it. It's like if they say, oh yeah, we really care about rule of 40, and our percentage is 40, and then you can say, okay, great, is are you measuring ARR or are you measuring revenue growth? Are you measuring margin or are you measuring EBITDA? And then these days too, there's a lot of focus around. There's actually a growth weighted rule of 40, so it actually matters more if you're growing faster than your margins. Hence, Bessemer put out there, I think it's called Rule of X, which basically is a growth adjusted rule of 40. Just like have a good conversation around that and know what all that means, and that's how you really determine if the business is healthy. Like know your metrics.
All right, maybe take me to the finish line. I'll stop interrupting you.
Okay.
How do we get? Yeah, tell me the rest of the process.
Okay. Then I met with one of their board members after that, and which, yeah, great sign. I definitely want to talk to our board member, whether they offer it or not. If they don't, if it's that's not part of the process, I kind of want to talk to the board member, and most will too. But I talked to the board member, and then yeah, after that, I yeah, I think yeah, I was just had another check in with Alina, and I said, oh, by the way, Alina, I put my 2 weeks in at cross check. Although I'm staying a little bit longer, and she said, oh well, we're not quite ready to make that, pull the trigger full time yet. Well, why don't you just come on part time, finish your time at cross check, half time there, and then you'll do half time here at Chili Piper. And that's actually the current transition. Is yeah, I'm done at crosscheck at the end of January, and then the intention is to go full time at Chili Piper. And it was partially used as as an excuse. Hey, let's just try each other out. It's just kind of that dating period too, which I think works out well too.
And you had planned to leave your job anyway, so you were probably willing to like. Would you have been willing to do a part time thing for a little bit in between as you found where you were going to go, or did you want to find somebody full time right out of the gate?
My intention was full time. Um, but yeah, I mean, maybe if I had told Alina that sooner, she would have just said, "Hey, let's have you start full time in January," and I wouldn't have. It would have been a little bit easier for me to say, "Sorry, I'm not going to stay 6 weeks here. I'm just going to stay my 2 weeks, and that's it."
Do you have any concerns about like, do you feel like you have this job? Like, are you going in there to be like, oh, this is my trial period. I'm going to crush it so I can become their full time VP of marketing? Or do you already have that in your head?
No, yeah, it feels like it's going to work out. Yeah, there's no signs that point to, oh, well, maybe Brandon's not the right guy. And I think a lot of it is going back to, it's a space that I know, it's a problem that I know because I faced that problem. I've purchased Chili Piper before and I know the product. So I was able to really hit the ground pretty quickly.
So what have you been doing? What type of work have you been doing in the transition period?
One of the big things that we're working on right now is the strategic narrative. It's our company POV, and then working on refining that, and then really landing our category, and then from there, it's how do we permeate that through everything that we do, from the sales team telling the story and the pitch decks and customer success to all of the great social content that Chili Piper already puts out. And then of course there's some tactical things too, like, hey, let's get you at this event to help drive attendance to the happy hour that we're throwing, and hopefully you're creating some conversations that turn into meetings. You're taking over the team. I have one-on-ones with all the team members already, that sort of thing, one-on-ones with the VP of sales and all the other stakeholders that I would need to have one-on-ones with.
All right. I don't have anything else to ask you. I think this was interesting to find out. Hopefully useful and informative. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
A few other things that are on my mind that I get questions about all the time. I think probably the biggest question that I get from people looking at companies is like, how do you determine the actual culture of the company? Because honestly, I think a lot of companies out there, they put their values on the website and it's a recruiting tool and that's it. And um, it's not the actual values that they live. And I think that, and what I always tell them is it's going to be a mix between just getting the sense throughout the entire interview process, ask them good questions about, tell me stories about the culture that you would find here that you wouldn't find anywhere else, or how are people recognized, how are people promoted, how are people rewarded, that sort of thing, and then just conversations on the back of that. But I think the best way to determine a company culture is talk to people who previously worked there. And I did that at Chili Piper. I reached out to previous Pipers who no longer work there. Some had great experiences, some didn't. I listened to all of those conversations. No one made the decision for me, but and I was able to take all the data points and really determine, is this a place that I want to work at? And still, after even some of the people who didn't have a great experience, my answer was still absolutely yes.
So it sounds like you spent a lot of you put a lot of effort into this and you got something great out of it. I think if you're just gonna blindly throw your resume to a bunch of places, it's gonna be harder to land versus like, you almost ran your own ABM process
Right,
on
right.
this. Here's one company. I know them really well. Here are the reasons why, here are the reasons why I can add value. But then also you did your fair share of research on like, now do I want to make sure I got to make sure this is right on my end. So I think that's really smart.
Yeah, yeah, and I was in a fortunate position where I didn't have to take whatever offer that I got from anyone because I was desperate for a job, and that obviously is helpful. I know a lot of people are not in that situation, but that certainly helped me. And if Chili Piper February says, you know what, this is not working out, Brandon, um, I I would go to my network and I would even reach out to recruiters. I think recruiters are great. Work with recruiters. Um, just know that are they contingent or are they a retained search, because that matters. And then just know that recruiters are incentivized on certain things for themselves. But I think recruiters are great. Like I have a list, I have a label on in my inbox and a recruiter that's ever reached out to me, so that now I can just look at that label and see, all right, if I need to find a job again, who am I going to reach out to? And I always try to be helpful too, especially if their title is like executive recruiter. I'll reply and be like, hey, I'm not looking right now, but hey, I know you're looking for someone who is really great at storytelling and brand. Let me introduce you to Dave. I think he might be a good person for this role. Just like build that relationship, you know? So anyway,
What about the
I'm a fan
process
of
of
recruiters.
what about the process of negotiating your comp? Did you have
Ooh,
to do
that's a
that
good one.
alone? Did you have any data? How did you approach that?
Okay, so yes, that's where I think always knowing what is out there is really good. Like, know what your worth is, know what the market is saying. And then I did do a lot of research. I pulled all the different reports from, I mean, Betts has some good data out there.
Yeah,
Pavilion has their own.
tell people where to look. Where can you find this?
Yeah, so Betts, Vistage, Pavilion had some good ones. I think I even saw a good article from Carta, and it was just, I think, executive comp or something like that. And yeah, so I got a good range for what I think I could be making at similar company. You have to find similar companies, right? It can't be, hey, I found this job opening for a CMO at a $1 billion company. They're willing to pay $500,000. I think I should be paid $500,000. You have to find similar companies. And then the other thing too is, like, you have to look at the entire package. It's not just title, it's not just your actual compensation. There are other things that you can negotiate too, like extended post termination exercise period, or you can pre-negotiate compensation increases on milestones. You can negotiate signing bonuses. You can pre-negotiate like leave or PTO. And if you're an executive, you probably can even at least have a conversation around like single trigger acceleration or double trigger acceleration
Yeah.
or the right to
Everybody says that, and then I've tried it every time, and everyone's like, "No."
it's I have gotten no more than anything else, but I
Yeah,
think it is
everyone's
more
like,
common
"No."
for bigger
And I'm like,
companies.
"Okay, I'll sign anyway."
Yeah, I don't sign anyway. Or even if it's like right to sell secondary or something, like, at least know your options out there.
Yeah.
Um,
But there's just so much you don't know any of this until you do it. I have no idea.
exactly, exactly. You don't know until you probably made a mistake, and that's honestly a lot of my own learnings. I know it because I fucked up in the past.
Yep, and you pay a lot of taxes before you have made any money.
Yeah, exactly,
And that's
exactly.
happened to me. Um, yeah, all right, this is great. So you did a bunch of research. That's like across all the layers. Like you're very measured and research guy, and you put more effort in. I think having some data on salary is and comp is a big thing. But to your point, you had a good point about there are many non-direct compensation things that you can try to negotiate in your favor, right?
Yeah, exactly. And these days too, with people who want more work-life balance, and realizing the importance of that, or even if it's like a health and wellness stipend where they're gonna pay your gym membership and they're gonna let you work out in the middle of the day 3 days or whatever that is. That's really important. So it's not all salary and title these days or equity.
All right, Brandon, thank you for hanging out with me. I gotta go. You gotta go. Go to LinkedIn, find Brandon, follow Chili Piper, and we will continue to see them on this journey. Expect lots of ABM
Yeah.
from now on. No, I'm just kidding. Because Brandon has a very popular episode. If you go into the Exit 5 podcast and search ABM with Brandon Redlinger, you can listen to that episode, one of the more popular things. And he also gave us a bunch of these great ABM templates that we have in the Exit 5
Ah,
community. So,
yes.
Brandon, always good to hang out and chat with you.
Always a
I'm
pleasure.
excited to see what you do. Have fun at a new company. It's like you get a new brand, a new company in a space that you're passionate about. So, I wish you the best, and I'll see you soon. All right.
All right, talk to you soon.
Exit. Exit.